All right, welcome to today's explainer. We are jumping right into an absolutely wild social and physical experiment. Seriously, the premise of this sounds like a Hollywood movie script. You've got two complete strangers, Huss and Grizz, dropped squarely in the middle of the unforgiving wilderness. They have literally never met before this exact moment. Their timeline? Completely unlimited. Their only goal? Just to survive. But as we're going to see, the concept of what it actually means to survive out there evolves dramatically as the days turn into weeks and weeks into months.
Okay, let's dive into this because the core mechanic that makes this entire scenario so compelling is wild. Every single day that Haze and Grizz manage to survive, they receive $10,000. And I don't mean a direct deposit or a number on a spreadsheet. This cash is literally dropped from an airplane in a parachuted briefcase every 24 hours. Theoretically, they could win an unlimited amount of money. If they stay a full year, they're looking at $3.6 million.
So ask yourself, what would you endure for that kind of money every single day? 10 grand, dropped right at your feet just for refusing to quit. It sounds like an absolute dream scenario at first, right? But as we track Haas and Grizz's journey, we're going to see exactly how fast those theoretical millions clash with the harsh, very immediate reality of human physical limits.
Let's start with Phase 1, the wilderness shock, covering days 1 through 9. Now, their starting supplies were incredibly meager. Just think about this. They were given approximately 5 days' worth of food, just 2 containers of water, some warm jackets, and a single fire starter. That is it. On night 1, the temperature just plunged. To survive the freezing cold, they were desperately gathering pine needles just to make these makeshift beds on the dirt, basically just praying they wouldn't freeze to death.
And the escalating physical toll of this environment was just staggering. We already talked about the pine needle beds on day 1. Well, by day 4, they were completely out of fresh water and had to drink from a stagnant local swamp. They had to boil this murky water, fully knowing it was just crawling with bacteria and parasites. By day 9, they were looking at active starvation. I mean, they were surviving on a single tiny square of beef jerky in the morning, literally staring at greenbrier leaves on the trees and wondering if they were edible. The shock to their physical systems was absolute.
That brings us to Phase 2. Resisting the temptations, spanning days 10 to 50. You see, to survive long-term, they had to move past simply enduring pain and actually start actively adapting. To stabilize their environment, they pulled off a crucial 3-step adaptation. First, they got away from that stagnant swamp and relocated to a creek with moving water that could actually hold fish. Second, they built this really impressive A-frame shelter out of dead trees, and they used the cords and fabric from their daily parachute drops as a rain cover. And third, they finally caught food. After 27 grueling days without a fresh meal, they caught an eel. To these guys, after nearly starving to death, that eel tasted like a world-class dish.
But here is where the psychological warfare really kicks in. The host of this challenge, Mr. Beast, regularly tried to tempt them into spending their hard-earned bankroll. On day 10, starving and desperate, they paid $50,000 for a massive food crate. It was a vital purchase, no question. But once their basic needs were met, a massive shift happened. On day 20, facing those freezing nights, they were offered military-grade sleeping bags for another 50 grand. They staunchly rejected them. On day 30, they were offered a full store, firewood, shovels, hammocks, for $10,000 an item. They rejected absolutely all of it. When they were offered a $10,000 hammock, Grizz had the best response. He simply said, "What can you not make out of parachutes?" They completely rejected the convenience of buying things, and instead opted to painstakingly repurpose the nylon and cords from the daily cash drops. They were fiercely protecting their earnings.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the staggering contrast between what they valued financially versus emotionally. On day 50, to avoid traversing a dangerous swamp, Hase actually built a makeshift boat out of sticks and a tarp. It was a literal death trap, but they completely refused to spend $40,000 on a pristine, safe boat offered by Mr. Beast. Yet, earlier on, they didn't hesitate for a single second to drop 10 grand on a video call just to see and speak to their families. They were infinitely frugal when it came to their own physical comfort, but money was no object when it came to human connection. Which leads perfectly into Phase 3, the emotional wall from days 50 to 70. As spring arrived and the immediate threat of freezing kind of subsided, deep internal and emotional struggles rushed in to take its place. That $10,000 family visit we just talked about, it was a major double-edged sword. It provided immense joy, for sure, but it also injected a profound, deeply distracting sense of longing and guilt into Hase. He has a newborn son and a 2-year-old at home. Hearing his wife tell him, "I want you home now, you need to bond with your son," well, that fundamentally changed how Hase viewed the entire challenge. He was no longer just fighting the woods, he was fighting his own heart. And the psychological pressures were mounting rapidly. Spring brought snakes and rats that harassed them every single night. The chronic lack of sleep completely shredded their patience. The rising irritability finally boiled over into outright bickering over something as trivial as untangling fishing lines. The tension actually got so high that Humbers packed up his things, paddled down the river, and temporarily isolated himself in a separate camp. But Grizz understood that to actually survive this, they needed each other. While Hase was gone, Grizz took one of the massive wooden boards from a $100,000 cash drop and repurposed it into a table for their camp. When Hase returned, completely exhausted, this simple gesture, this $100,000 table, was an incredibly powerful peace offering. It reminded them that they weren't just competitors anymore. They had built a real brotherhood out there, and they needed to fight this mental fatigue together. And that brings us to the final chapter, the final decision, days 70 to 74. Haas had reached his absolute breaking point. See, at the very start of this challenge, they actually split their exit flare gun in half, so neither guy could unilaterally quit. But by day 74, Haas was so desperate to be a father again that he secretly dug into Grizz's bag and stole the other half of the flare gun. When Grizz confronted him, Haas delivered some devastating words. He told him the millions of dollars meant absolutely nothing to him anymore. The emotional pull of his family had completely and totally eclipsed the financial reward. So the crucial point here is how this experiment entirely redefines the word survive. Initially, it was all about enduring the freezing cold and battling starvation, but in the end, to survive meant preserving their emotional and mental well-being. Grizz desperately wanted to stay to make $1 million, but when he saw his brother fracturing, he made the ultimate sacrifice. He told Hase to fire the flare. Grizz literally chose to save his friend's mental health over hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the moment that flare went up, it was all over. For enduring 74 grueling days of freezing weather, starvation, and immense psychological pressure, they walked away with a massive final payout of $670,000. The whole thing culminated in an incredibly emotional reunion, right there in the wilderness, with the families they had missed so intensely. They survived 74 days, walking away as rich men and lifelong brothers. But looking at the emotional toll it took, I want to leave you with this final thought. At what point does the cost to survive become too high? When does the pursuit of wealth stop serving the very family you're trying to provide for? It's a truly fascinating look at the value of money versus human connection. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it provided some real insight into an incredible test of human endurance.